and I'm actually said they've asked me to speak about my book, Field Guide to Climate Change. Bob Grove, I think I've met a lot of you. I'm the president of the Climate Council. I mean, Kansas City Climate Council, Climate GKC actually stands for Climate Council General Knowledge Center. And the Climate Council has chapters around the country. So Kansas City was our first and our biggest and our greatest. So, thank you all for being part of that. I'm also the executive producer of the Climate Hour, which you can find at climatehour.net and on the Climate Council's YouTube channel. I heard you talking about nuclear a little earlier. We did a episode on nuclear 2-3 months ago. Had David Kraft, who's the director and co-founder of the Nuclear Energy Information Service, kind of an anti-nuclear power group, and Brigadier General Wendell Chris King, who's very pro-nuclear power. So that was a great broadcast. Talked about all the things you mentioned, the small reactors. We got into some fusion. There's some new cold fusion coming along. And surprisingly, the opposite sides of the argument kind of agreed on everything. So it's well worth a listen if you want to go back to that. And I'm also a presenter. I do a series of living workshop series, presentations, on different environmental topics, and the author. So here's where we are. Wordsinger is my publishing firm. So, we have the Field Guide to Climate Change, and I also have a Field Guide to Plastics. So, my book is available Amazon, Apple, Android, Barnes & Noble's, paperback and ebook. And the Field Guide to Plastics releases April 1st. So that starts shipping in 3 weeks. So I'm excited about that. So prospering in a post-climate change world. My book's actually called Field Guide to Climate Change, Prospering in a Post-Climate Change World. And how do we do that? The book kind of emphasizes 3 things. It talks about how to learn to be ready for climate change. And that's not just the major weather events, but it's all the other things that come with climate, the emerging viruses, the health issues, the economic issues that are associated with gearing up for climate disasters. So we talk about that, number one. I kind of mentioned the health and safety issues, not just the climate, but the viral and the environmental health issues we deal with, and also how to save money. It surprised me in my presentations and my research. It surprised me how many of the things that are good for the climate also saves us money in the long run. So, I've really kind of emphasized that in the book. And the book is targeted towards individuals, individuals taking action. Listen to Zach and the previous presentations talking about those big community legislative things and how important they are. True. But there's also that approach of grass ups. What can the individual do instead of waiting for government to move? What can the individuals do? And that's kind of where my books and my presentations focus. I'm going to read you the back cover just to kind of give you an idea of the voice of the book. Face it, climate change has happened. It's no longer a future threat. We're living with it today. Let's just accept that and move forward. We have to survive on ever-expanding range of weather extremes, an ever-growing list of natural disasters, a steady drip of pandemic-prone viruses, and the economic impacts of skyrocketing energy and food costs. The environment is filled with new challenges, but we can survive, even prosper. Climate is a really big issue, and it's easy to get lost in all the jargon and abbreviations. Do you even begin to address something this complex? Even if we didn't let it overwhelm us emotionally, it's far too easy to spend all of our time and money digging out of the last disaster instead of preparing for the next. There are clear, easy steps we can take to prepare for climate change, both the climate change that's already here and the climate change coming down the road. The first step is to break the big, complex problem down into manageable sections, each with a group of small, clear actions that are easy to take and together help us secure our health and safety, save money, and position us for a safe and prosperous future. The old adage, caveat emptor, buyers beware, applies to climate change as much as it does to used cars, and it's our responsibility to beware of greenwashing and to make personal choices that assure the health, safety, and welfare of ourselves, our communities, our children, and future generations. This field guide will help. So that's kind of the idea of the book. The idea is to present a bunch of talking points that you can share with friends, neighbors, family, and action items that as an individual we can take to start addressing the climate issues. I'm showing the table of contents there. You can see how it's been broken down to different sectors, and we'll briefly just, look at each of these and then answer some questions. Let me start with the introduction. I like to create, I like to write in a very personable, easy, conversational manner. But, we're also interested in science and politics. Not everybody is, but a lot of us want to know the hard science, and a lot of us need to understand the politics that are involved. What I do in my books is I put those all in the introduction. I tell people, hey, if you're not interested in this, skip the intro and go to the first chapter. Perfectly legitimate, and I applaud you for doing that. So the first section, the intro, is where I do all the hard science. In this case, looking at weather science, looking at some chemistry, looking at the physics involved. I explain all those things to people. And then I go through it again with politics. My opening statement is that climate change is really very simple if we ignore the politics. And then, I go into the science and explain all that. And then about halfway through the intro, I say, once again, with politics. And then I get into all the history of the various cover up, climate denying, what's the financial motivation for doing that, the strategies, picking up the tobacco playbook to deny climate and kick the can down the road. We talk about all of that in the intro. So if you're interested in that stuff, the intro is a great place to go. If you just want to get to the pure what's happening, what can I do about it, then we just skip over the intro and go on. The intro science, we're dealing with stuff like the Keeling curve. I explain when we talk about greenhouse gases, what are they? So, we talk about CO2. We explain that. We talk about the little guy sitting up on the volcano in Hawaii, Big Island on Mauna Loa, and measuring CO2 every day and why that was important. And the blue line being the South Pole, why that's important. We talk about ice coring and how we can pull CO2 levels over 800,000 years. What I'm doing is providing the science to explain to the layman that this is real. We actually know that CO2 is increasing. This isn't just made up by people. We look at the NASA. This is NASA temperature readings across the world. So we're actually seeing real numbers here. This is explaining global warming. We explain this to people in a way that they understand that this is real data. It's not just somebody making this up. And we look at other things. Here's temperature readings from our ice core samples. We look at the increasing weather disasters that are coming out of this climate change. We can see how those are increasing to the right. And this chart stops at 2018. I really want to update this chart. This is NOAA. I want to get their latest chart. The last 3 or 4 years, we've had so many disasters. We're looking at, a peak of $18 billion disaster events on this chart. We've had a lot more than that in the last few years. And here's kind of the summary. This is what I'm wanting my people to understand at the end of the intro, that increasing greenhouse gases causes global warming, which creates dramatic climate change that causes weather disasters. I feel like if people understand this correlation between these different buzzwords, they understand how they relate to each other, then they start having a foundation of knowing what's happening and what actions they can take. So first chapter, by the sectors. And this is where I say we've got this big problem and we need to break it down into manageable chunks. So, I'm using the EPA's greenhouse gas emissions by economic sector as the model for that. And basically, I have separate chapters for each of the 4 big pie slices. We saw some of this on Zach's slideshow. The electric production, the 25. The other energy in buildings all get dumped into that. Other energy, that 10% is greenhouse gas emissions from extracting fossil fuels and transporting them to the power plants. And the buildings, the 6%, that's heat and power generation within our homes or factories. So that all kind of gets lumped together in a chapter. And we talk about food, and we talk about transportation, and we talk about industry. That's breaking it down and letting people focus on what they can do within that sector. Plugging in fits right in with HRES, right? How to plug into renewable energy. That's a fairly short chapter, but we're explaining the new solar and wind options that are available now and available in the future. And we talk to people about the need to plug into that and unplug from fossil fuels. I'm going to skip the videos. I only have 20 minutes here, I understand, so we're just going to keep cranking. forward. Sheltering in place is really the first big chapter with lots of talking points and lots of action items. And this is where I get into what people can do within their own home or office. And we look through the whole thing, lighting, very simple, but very effective way of improving your environment and saving money, all those things. We do an analysis of LEDs versus CFLs versus incandescent. Obviously the 7-watt LED putting out the same amount of light as the 60-watt incandescent. We explain that to people, and obviously you're buying 7 watts, that's cheaper and better for the environment. We look at the health issues, that incandescent tungsten filament, that can get over 3,000 degrees. That'll burn you, that's hot, that's a health risk. And we look at the CFLs, we know those contain mercury vapor. You drop one of those and break it, you've got mercury exposure. So there's health issues involved there. So you can save money. That LED allegedly runs 25,000 hours, whereas the incandescent runs 1,200 hours. So even if you're paying $2, $3 more for the LED, it's going to last 20 times longer. You save money. We talk about heating and cooling, moving to not only heat pumps, but we advise people to move to the ductless mini splits. That's a technology that's been used in Europe and Japan for 50 years now. And it's really super efficient. You've got zoned heating and cooling. It can be retrofitted onto old houses by running your tubing up and down the outside. You guys probably already know this. I'm probably preaching to the choir here, but a lot of people don't understand that. And for me, it's also really great to get rid of that ductwork. Our homes with the forced air furnaces and the ductwork, those ducts fill with allergens, fill with dust. There's a lot of health issues that are driven by that ductwork. And in a ductless mini split, we're not only giving you super efficient heating, cooling, it's not only costing you less because of the efficiency, but we also have this huge improvement in your environment's health because we're eliminating the ductwork. So again, another area we explain, we talk about hot water. Going to an electric hot water heater is so much better than that gas hot water heater. But even better is going to a tankless hot water heater. And even better than that is going to distributed on-demand hot water heaters under your sinks and by your tub. Saves you money. You don't have to stand there and wait in the shower for that hot water pipe to drain the cold water. Wait for that hot water to get to you. And it's better for the environment. You're not leaking that heat. Those hot water pipes you have running through your house is radiating 40% of your energy to heat the spaces before it even gets to your tub or drain. So that's kind of stuff we talk about there. Cooking, we compare the gas ranges and all the problems there are with those to electric ranges, which don't have the health issues of the gas, but they're still super inefficient electrically in terms of energy. And we compare that to the new induction technology, which is super efficient, uses less electricity, heats the food instead of heating the space around it. So we do all those comparisons. We talk about dryers, Energy Star. We actually encourage people to consider the clothesline, to do what the Europeans do and use drying racks instead of running your dryer. So you can save money, makes your clothes last longer. Again, healthier for the environment, healthier for the planet. Fireplaces, pros and cons, gas logs, that kind of stuff, heat loss through the chimney. Yard work. Here's a spot that's often ignored, but all of those petroleum-powered yard tools, they can be replaced with electrical. But even more important, I like to emphasize, let's get rid of the grass. Let's go to ground cover. Mowing your grass costs a lot of money, takes a lot of time. Maybe you like being in the yard, but there's a lot of other things you can do in the yard. So we talk about going to ground covers. We talk about sequestration, the fact that you can turn your yard into a carbon sink and actually help the environment by pulling carbon out of the air. And you can turn your yard into a food forest, producing nutritious food locally. So we have a big section on that. Talk about renters. If you're renting a home, you really can't put in a ductless mini split or redo the hot water heaters, but you can insulate. We talk about insulating your apartment. We talk about turning off your electric range or your gas range. Just get behind them, unplug them. You can put a piece of cardboard or a piece of plywood on top of that and put a little portable induction burner. Put an Instapot or an electric air fryer up there. You don't, as a renter, have to use those clunky, old, inefficient appliances. You can use the modern efficient ones, and when you're ready to move, you just pick them up and take them with you. And we also talk about new construction. All of these techniques, we're talking about retrofitting into a home to save a person money and make the space healthier. I talk to the contractors that are building homes and talk to them about building these in. Think of some of the advantages, the cost savings if you don't even put duct work in that house. Heating and cooling is going to be much cheaper and easier to install if you don't bother with the duct work. What about hot water? Instead of running 2 pipelines to every faucet in the home, you can just run one cold water pipeline to the faucet and then put a distributed mini on-demand hot water heater under that sink. Saves you lots of money in developing. And frankly, you can sell the house for more because suddenly it's a healthier house, it's more climate efficient, and it's a future looking house instead of installing all these old techniques. So that's the sheltering in place. A lot of info, a lot of action items there. I mean, we start with telling people just to change their light bulbs, and, we talk to them about changing their heating, cooling, retrofitting those, go into the kitchen. We actually talk about a lot of the toxic effects of having gas in the home. So, the health related things, the leaks from your natural gas, even just the normal pilot light in your range, there's burning and releasing basically, fossil fuels. It's burning a fossil fuel there in the kitchen. And even if you're not using that stove, that pilot light is still releasing the byproducts of burning fossil fuel. So a lot of stuff there. How we get there is looking at the transportation aspect of our lives and spend a good amount of time talking about active transportation. By active transportation, we're talking about walking, biking. We look at the studies of the Federal Highway Agency. They say that 30% of all trips, all daily trips, are within a mile of your home. Over 50% of all your trips are within 3 miles of your home. All of us, most of us can walk a mile. Most of us could bike 3 miles. We're showing people the health benefits, walking, biking. There's a lot of studies out there that show how those reduce, heart disease, they reduce diabetes, they reduce depression. There's a lot of health benefits of active transportation. You're obviously saving a lot of money. You're also obviously helping the planet. So we talk about that. And then when you can't walk, we talk about mass transit, public transportation. Obviously, a lot of advantages there. If you can just go sit on a bus and then you just sit there and relax and chill while you get to the other side of town. It reduces the stress, it reduces the climate emissions. And in most places these days, at least urban areas and suburban areas, the public metro systems tend to be free. Getting on and off those buses are just kind of things that the city provides these days. In my travels around the country, I'm seeing more and more metro areas where the entire metro bus system is free. And light rail, Kansas City's got that great light rail. A bus will take 40 cars off the road. So you can see that's really good for the climate. Light rail, like you have in Kansas City, is going to take 150 cars off the road. And then beyond that, we get into the electric vehicle versus the gas. If you're doing that mid-range trip, if you're traveling one state to the other and you don't want to take the train, obviously advantages of electric vehicles, not only economically and environmentally. And by economically, I'm talking about not just the price of the vehicle, and electrics are now on a par with gas vehicles. I'm not talking hybrids, I'm talking electrics. They're on a par with gas vehicles. So, it's costing you the same amount of money. It's going to be a lot cheaper to run. And the big thing most people don't realize is that you're going to save a big bunch on maintenance. I mean, just think about that. The gas car coming with what, carburetors and mufflers and oil pumps and radiators and all of those things that you don't have in an electric vehicle. The maintenance on electric vehicles going to be struts, tires, and windshield wipers. That's about it. So you're saving lots and lots of money. And, I've quoted several of the university studies that have looked at average savings overall. So some good money savings there. Healthier because you're not driving around in something that's emitting carbon monoxide and other toxic fumes, and really great for the environment. And then we discuss long haul. Driving versus taking a train or flying. What's the break even? What's the advantage? I think we found that The studies are showing that about 630 miles is the break point of driving versus flying. If you're going less than 600 miles, there's less carbon emissions if you drive. If you're going more than 600 miles, that jet plane, as inefficient as it is, but it's got 300 people in it. So divide that out. If you're going more than 600 miles, there's actually less carbon emissions to fly. And then I close that section talking about electric flight. And, I'm really excited about what's going on there. And this is all pretty cutting edge, but, there's a lot of new things coming out on electric flight. Just grabbing a chapter here. Rail electric, here we go. A few years from now, maybe not so much, regional flights are already moving to electric planes. Hawaii Airlines is investing in all-electric 100-passenger planes to fly 130 daily inter-island trips by 2028. So if you're going to Hawaii and you're going to fly to another island, you'll be on an electric plane. United Airlines has ordered hundreds of electric planes from Archer Aviation to provide air taxi services between their airport hubs and downtown areas starting 2025. That's next year. They've also ordered 100 larger airplanes from Hart Aerospace to start flying regional routes by 2030. Just a lot of good stuff going on there. So I was very excited to see that. We got to eat. You got to talk about food. And there's so much carbon, climate change.
Turns out,
again, I'm going to skip the video because of time limits. But there's so many things that we could do just by making small adjustments to our diet that impacts climate, impacts our cost of living, impacts our health. The first thing we look at is climate emissions. Which foods release the most amount of carbon? And there's a lot of charts in this chapter. I'm just paging over here. Yeah, so a simple thing, greenhouse gas emissions. A serving of beef, it emits 330 grams of greenhouse gases to prepare a serving of beef. It takes 14 grams, it emits 14 grams of greenhouse gases for a serving of vegetables. Chicken, 52 grams. So we can look at these tables and we see the different meats and plant-based products we can eat, and we see the different emissions. I've got another chart here that breaks down protein by greenhouse gas emissions. How much greenhouse gas does it take to produce 100 grams of protein? It's 105 kilograms of greenhouse gas to produce 100 grams of protein in beef. It's less than 4 kilograms of greenhouse gas to produce 100 grams of protein using tofu. So you can see food choices really impact climate emissions. We talk about food and land use, which is a big one. Jump over to the chart here. It takes 4.45 acres of land to feed the livestock needed to feed one person on a meat diet for 1 year. It takes 1/3 acre of land to feed a person on a vegan diet for that same year. You can grow 37,000 pounds of corn on 1 acre, or you can raise 350 pounds of beef. So again, food choices. And I'm not arguing people should become vegan or vegetarian or any of that. I'm arguing that a healthy diet, we're showing people that a healthy global diet, and scientists use the term HGD, a healthy global diet, which is smaller servings of meat, not meat every meal, but more vegetables. The doctors have been saying, eat your vegetables, eat your fruit for years. Healthy global diet, that has a massive impact on carbon reduction for the climate. That uses a massive amount of less land, 37,000 pounds of corn versus 300 pounds of beef. It also it has great health impacts. Well, and water use. Water. Here's water. It takes 22 gallons of water to produce a pound of tomatoes. It takes 1,852 gallons of water to produce a pound of beef. It takes 1,100 gallons of water to produce 1 gallon of milk. I'm always kind of struck by that number when I'm in the grocery store and I see the milk case. Every one of those gallons there took 1,100 gallons of water to make. World population. We talked a little bit about that. Just the fact that shifting our diets to more efficiently use our land is going to feed a lot more people. If we can produce 37,000 pounds of corn instead of 300 pounds of meat, and we translate to rice or beans or some other high protein food, look how much more people we could feed. And I don't know that it's a world population issue as much as it's an eating meat issue. Food and health, obviously everything we're talking about improves your health, cardiovascular, cancer links to cancer, diabetes, all those things are food related. And if we shift to these diet trends that are good for the climate, good for land use and water use, they're actually very healthy. And obviously, greater health creates better longevity. And then we look at the economic impact for our nations. I've got studies that show that we would produce trillions of dollars in production, trillions of dollars in productivity is the word I'm looking for, by eating a healthier diet. So, we're saving the planet, we're personally healthier, and, we've got better economies and all those things. So a lot of stuff there. And then the industrial sector, and I'm calling that what we wear, because obviously I'm going to talk about clothing. Clothing in the industrial sector, and again, I'm going to skip this video. This is a quick chart. I mean, these numbers are in the book, but I just wanted to give an example of the type of things we talk about. This is looking at the number of megajoules per kilogram to produce given fibers, number of megajoules to produce a kilogram of fiber. So you look on the low end there, and, hemp clothing, kind of amazingly great. Let's start with linen, because a lot of us wear linen clothing. That's a really nice fabric. It takes 10 megajoules of energy to produce a kilogram of linen. Organic cotton, the CO print, organic cotton's right down there with linen, very good product. Now you get to non-organic cotton, the CO, you see that jumps up quite a bit because they're spraying it with pesticides, herbicides. You got the tractors going back and forth. There's just more industrial farming, so greater greenhouse gas emissions, uses more energy. And wool, decent. I mean, really the big impact there is that it's a ruminant animal, so it has greater impact on the climate. But, shearing wool is a decent alternative. We need that for warmth. But then you get into these other things. And rPET is recycled plastic, fairly efficient as far as plastic goes, but you've got all your chemical leaching and things that are a problem there. Not my favorite. Viscose is chopped wood fiber, basically taking cellulose, breaking it down and turning it into fabric. Takes a lot of energy because of the conversions involved there. If you're looking at bamboo clothing online, that's going to fall into the viscose category. So, I mean, look how much more energy and climate emissions that bamboo clothing is going to have than linen or cotton, organic cotton. I mean, let's go with the natural ones. And then you get into your petrol textiles, your fossil fuel-based polyester, acrylic, nylon, spandex, lycra, all of those things. And look at the amount of energy it takes to produce that. Nylon takes 250 megajoules to produce a kilogram. Steel only takes 35 megajoules to produce a kilogram of steel. 35. Nylon takes 250. So we talk about that. Industry section. I explained that there are 74 classes of industry. The fashion industry is one of those 74, yet the fashion industry alone produces 8.1% of all greenhouse gas emissions. That's all global greenhouse gas emissions. One industry out of 74 produces 8% of all global greenhouse gas emissions. So a lot of people I've spoken to over the years have said, what can I do about industry? I have no control. Well, what you can do is change the type of clothing you're wearing. You can impact one class of industry, yes, but that one class of industry is a huge impact on the environment. 8% of greenhouse gas emissions. It's 38, almost 40% of all industrial greenhouse gas emissions. Very disproportionate. And there's also a disproportionate amount of toxic chemicals and stuff that are coming out of that industry. We talk about microfibers and pollution. I talk about waste and landfill. So all these talking points and all these action items of how you can clean up your wardrobe and have a huge impact on the environment. We're moving away from the leaching of PFAs and stuff into your environment so it's healthier. And in the long run, it's going to save you money because instead of the fast fashion thing where, I'm going to drop $10, $20 on something, but I'm going to throw it away in 2 weeks because it falls apart. You can invest $100 in a good piece of clothing that's going to last you for years. And in the long run, that will save you money. So prospering in a post-climate change world, what I call the trifecta. All the action items in my book help you save money and increase the value of your property. These are all things that will improve your health. And these are all things that fight climate change. So the trifecta, what's to lose? What's not to like about it? So I'm going to stop here. I don't know if we have time for questions. Ken, what do you want to do? Or are we still live?
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you now.
Okay. I didn't have the microphones turned on. I had to turn them back on. Cool. All right. So give me a second too. We're getting some feedback. If you could turn that down. Thank you. Oh, oops, a daisy. All right. Leave that on, would you please? We're still technical fixing things here on this end, Bob.
No problem.
All right. So now there's two microphones here. I have one and I got one I can carry around for questions. So does anybody have questions? Oh, if you want to. Oh, let me turn it on first. It'll work better if I turn it on. All right. We got a question coming.
Thanks. Hi, Bob. Adam Rossi here. Thank you so much for your presentation. This was pretty sweet. I'm not going to lie. Whenever you came on, you were like, I have a climate change book. I was kind of skeptical at first. I'm like, we have a lot of climate change books. How good can this actually be? But yeah, after talking through your presentation, I'm like, wow, this is awesome. I work basically at a retreat center. I would love to get a copy of this to put in our library and be able to talk to volunteers that come our way about it. I'm intrigued to read it. A lot of really good information, it sounds like, in there. My question is, okay, how do I phrase this? Like I have a gas burning car, right? And I definitely want my next car to be an electric car, but I'm not necessarily in a hurry to go buy a car to replace it. In the same way with like my clothes, like, yeah, I have clothes that I was given mostly, and I want to replace them with climate friendly clothes, but I'm also not going to like run out and buy them right now. So do you talk about like just the idea of like reuse and using things to its end of life and like planned obsolescence, like that kind of
Absolutely.
Yeah, perspective?
Yeah, so I mean, in the clothing perspective, we spend a lot of time talking about shopping your closet. The idea of you need something, instead of rushing to a store, see what's in the closet, see what's in that closet downstairs. You probably have something in the back of a drawer or someplace to use. I mean, the plastic clothing is there, the polyesters and such. We obviously don't want you to take those out and throw them in the landfill. I mean, what does that do to us? I mean, let's use them for their life, for, as long as we can. Let's keep them out of the landfill. Even in terms of, I need a rain slicker or something, which, is going to be either PFA coated or polyester or acrylic or something like that. Go to the used clothing store to get that. The idea is we don't want to bring new plastic clothing into the environment. So I encourage people not to buy new. If you do need a piece of plastic for whatever reason, you're willing to take the chemical leaching risks and all that, which, yeah, we all do that. You go to that used clothing store and buy it there. Somebody will recycle it to you. So yeah, use what you've got. It's just the idea of buying new. We talk about consumerism too. We don't need as much clothing. I talk about the laundry section, laundering your clothing, wears it out. We could launder our clothing less. We can perhaps wear it twice before it gets thrown in the dirty laundry bin. So ways to make your clothing last longer, ways to go find used clothing to fill the needs. We address that. And then the same way on the car. I mean, you don't want to, you've got a perfectly good car. It's not cost efficient for you to just instantly replace that. So the idea is that when you're ready for that new car, then go look at the electrics. I kind of tried hybrids. I mean, they've served their purpose, but really today, no reason to buy a hybrid. So just skip over that and go look at the full electrics. I mean, the Chevy Bolt is really, the 2023 Chevy Bolt really has some great specs on it. I mean, there's the Teslas out there that are high performance and great but for most of us, Chevy Bolt's going to do everything we need. And, I'm trying to remember the numbers. I think it's, retail pricing around 6,000. It gets the equivalent of 120 miles per gallon. mean, it's electric, but they do convert that to miles per gallon for comparison. So you're doing like 120 miles per gallon, and it's got like a 270-mile range on a single charge. So, there are good solutions down there, but you don't do that now. You wait till you're ready to buy that new car. And then, like I say, the other thing is skip the hybrid, go directly to that electric car. Interesting aside here, since we're talking about hybrids, is they're starting to move hybrid engines into the big jet planes. So the smaller commuters and taxis, air taxis and such, those are going full electric. But all the major airline manufacturers are now looking at hybrid engines where the jet engine would basically take off and land, and they'll have electric engines that fly you, that taxi you out to the runway and that keep you at level flight. So I'm seeing hybrid engines doing for the airline industry what they did for the auto industry, and probably 10 years from now will be fully electric, all airlines. I think that's cool. Thank you, Adam.
Thanks, Bob. You're an incredible wealth of knowledge.
There's a question online about where is the book available?
Boom. Bring this right back up. You can find the book on Amazon. Matter of fact, that QR code, if you want to grab that with your phone, that will take you to Amazon. You'll find that on Amazon, on Apple Books, on Android Books, on Barnes & Noble's website. The book we're talking about, Field Guide to Climate Change, is available in paperback and ebook. Right now, it's been out for a while. The Field Guide to Plastic, you can pre-order the ebook now on Amazon and Apple, and both the ebook and the paperback start shipping April 1st. So that's 3 weeks. I want to say, and I told you I do a lot of presentations for the last 5 years. That was kind of my primary outlet source of sharing this information. And really, this book, Field Guide to Climate Change, came out of that process. At the end of every presentation, and as Adam was saying, there's a lot of stuff in here. There's a lot of things we can do to be healthy, to save money, and to save the planet. At the end of each of these presentations, people walk up to me and go, "Oh, that's great. How am I going to remember all this? You need to write a book, blah, 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 blah." And I did. And the thing about this book is this is actually all 5 of my climate presentations compressed into this one book. So it's very short, very pithy. We say, do this, here's why, here's what it will do. It's not a book that spends a lot of time, waxing philosophical. It really is a field guide in that format.
Okay, I got a question, Bob. This is Ken Reed.
Sure.
The presentation, you more or less went past the videos that you had in the presentation.
Uh-huh.
How long does your total presentation take if you were to have the videos play too? I
usually take an hour, and that would
Okay.
be like 45 of me talking, running the videos, and then 10, 15 minutes Q&A. The videos are holdovers from my workshop presentations. And what we have in the book, obviously the book isn't a video, but what we have in the book is the data from the video. So there is a pretty tight correlation between, what we would see in a video and what you would actually read in the book.
Okay. So if we were to have you come back and do a presentation for HRES on your own with the videos included, we're looking at about an hour.
Looking about an hour, yeah. With Q&A. I mean, 45 minutes.
Right.
Let me talk for 45 and whatever. I think I actually did one of those for HRES 4 or 5 years ago. I mean, certainly before the pandemic. I think I came in and did one of my sustainable living presentations.
Yes, you did,
Okay.
but you haven't talked for a while and you haven't done one on the field guide. So
Yes.
now I'm going to put this on our website here, and it's going to take another couple of weeks to get it out there, but maybe a long version in the near future.
Okay, be happy to do that.
All right. Do we have any more questions from anybody online or here? Okay, so far, I think that's the end of the questions, Bob. So I think we're going to go
Okay.
back to being live here where we're at the library. Thank you
Sure.
very much.
Thank you for having me. I really appreciate talking to all of you.
I don't know if you can hear all the applause or not, but everybody gave you a big round. So
Well, thank you. Thank you.